very much. Thank you. Just to be clear on what an accountability statement is, I'm going to read out my manifesto pledges and then talk about whether I succeeded or failed in delivering them with 1 week left of my presidency. So in my manifesto, I made 6 key pledges. 4 of these were achieved, 2 were not, and I will start with the ones that weren't. I tried to get us a joint ball with the Oxford Union. They said yes, then they said no, then they said yes, then they said no. There were some complications due to what would happen if one of our members were to get too drunk in Oxford and damage something, and in the end they decided it wasn't worth the hassle. I'm sorry we weren't able to deliver it, but in fairness, we were never going to have a Lent ball proper here because half the building, you may have noticed, is a building site. Nevertheless, I tried my best, and as with so many things in this building, the entire fault lies with the other place. The second commitment that I failed to deliver on was table tennis tables outside on the grass. Some reasons I dealt with this is just as term hits you, you run out of time and energy and you stop pursuing things. The other thing is I grossly underestimated how cold Lent term was. There was never going to be substantial demand for this, and quite rightly, the bursar and several members of the staff put me straight on what was clearly a ludicrous idea. But returning to the other 4 pledges, I think I have delivered them. My central pledge was to make the union greener. In fact, the ambition was to make it carbon neutral, though I admitted that that couldn't happen in one term. We have committed to offsetting flights of people who come to speak in this union. We've moved from having disposable batteries to rechargeable ones. We've also, in discussions about how we are doing the rebuilding and the renovation, moved away from a proposal in which a very large tree at the back was being cut down. We have also, in my time here, though I have to admit I had no role in this at all, moved to a much more efficient boiler. And with all of those things, we have made this union greener. We put this on the agenda, and I'd like to thank Freddie in particular for helping with that. Another thing that we have succeeded on is culture debates. I committed to have debates not just on political issues, but on cultural ones. We have had one of those debates, and another is happening on Tuesday. We debated Oscar Wilde versus George Orwell, and on Tuesday we will be debating Athens versus Sparta. I feel I have delivered on my promise for culture, even if it has only been high culture so far. I've also succeeded on my promise of greater accountability. I'm here speaking to you now. I have to say I was encouraged particularly. I thought I'd rather given up on this happening, but I'm grateful to Abraham for reminding us all that we were meant to do this. So greater accountability. We had wanted to reform, as part of that greater accountability, how returning officers were selected. On this, I have failed. But I will be writing a parting shot as president, which I hope will go up on the board, speaking about things I wish I'd done, wish I'd finished. My chief regret in this role is that I failed to reform how our returning officers are elected. But as with all presidents of this society, I am at the mercy of standing committee, what it wants, how much time it has, and what we decide is at the front of our agenda. 8 weeks and only 2 trustees meetings is a very short time to achieve everything you want. The final thing that I believe I achieved success on was on expanding access. I made a commitment that we would tier the bursary system. Prior to these changes, if you applied to be a member of this society and you weren't getting the full Cambridge bursary, if you were £1 short of the parental income relevant to getting that bursary, you got no reduction at all. Now we've introduced a system of tiers where it is done by thirds. If you are in the first half of the partial bursaries, you will get a 2/3 reduction towards the bursary membership. If you are on the lower half of the receipt of any Cambridge bursary, you'll get a 1/3 reduction, and we have delivered our promise to tier the bursary system. And with that, I conclude my accountability statement.
Yes. Would anyone like to ask Gabriel any questions? If so, please raise your hand.
It would really help with my accountability promise if somebody did ask a question.
No? Okay. Thank you, Gabriel.
Forgive me, I can't stay for the rest. We've got the debate guests upstairs, but thank you. And please do ask questions to everybody else.
Next up, we have Aman, who is a second-year geographer at Homerton. She's currently the executive officer, and she will be given her accountability statement now.
Hello, thank you for that kind introduction, Alicia. Yeah, my speech is not quite as long as Gabriel's, though I think that's partially made up for the fact that I've got to do another one in about 10 minutes. So when I ran back in Easter 2019, I ran on a platform that circulated around 3 main points: varying debates, prioritising members, and collaborating more. Debates this term were quite varied. We had literature, military intervention, the monarchy, climate, and Hong Kong to name some of them. I do think I've delivered on that. However, I did promise bolder debates, something a little more controversial, and I don't necessarily think that this term's debate lineup was quite that. It was in parts, calling China an imperial power, singling out Western military intervention, but I think we could have gone a little bit further. I think sort of the reason for that is, as I realised, the executive officer doesn't get the final say in who actually, in what the actual debate lineup is. I also pledged that I would put members at the centre. Establishing a platform that would allow members to give opinions and suggestions was one of my points, and there is now a suggestions box in the lobby, though right now I think that's being used to hold open the door of the President's office. I also made heavy use of the membership survey circulated by the Vice President in Easter term, and it did ask about debate topics and motions, and the debates that were suggested and the topics that were suggested, I made sure that those were central to this term's debate lineup. Combining a social event with a drop-in session never quite happened though, unfortunately. I think what Gabriel said, term does catch up to you. You do eventually drop a few things. But committee members are always present in the post-debate drinks reception in the bar, and it's been a good chance to get to know members and answer many a question about being on committee. Collaborating more. The Hong Kong debate operated alongside the Cambridge campaign for Hong Kong, and I do believe the Lit debate worked with the Cambridge Literature Review, or the Cambridge Review of Books. Maybe collaboration wasn't as extensive as I'd hoped, but I did realise that actually sort of this long-term planning, how you collaborate, who you collaborate with, how secretive do you keep it, all of these things put together, it did make it somewhat unviable. But there was some collaboration. And I did make the literature debate open to all, which usually isn't the case. It's usually the comedy debate. Securing debate sponsorship from companies relevant to debates. Credit doesn't go to me for that one, unfortunately, but a number of our debates have been sponsored. In fact, tonight's has very, very kindly been sponsored by AstraZeneca. I think that's roughly it for me. Thank you very much, and I'm very open to take questions.
Would anyone like to ask Aman any questions? No? Thank you very much, Aman. We'll be hearing from you shortly. Next up, we have Abraham. He is a second-year natural scientist at Christ College. He's the current Speaker's Officer and will now give his accountability statement.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'd just like to start this by thanking everyone here, even if you didn't vote for me at the end of Easter last 2019, I think, for having faith in me to serve as your Speaker's Officer this term. It's been such an honor to take on this role. and I hope I've done it justice. I'm going to talk a bit through what I had on my manifesto and where I got. I'm happy to say that I actually achieved more than I actually thought I would. So I had 3 promises. I think I made significant success on all 3. So those 3 promises were the first being revamping the union's online presence. So my rationale behind this was looking at the Oxford Union's online presence. They have more subscribers than us. They have better social media platform. Their videos are better edited. They get more views. And all of this can, if we were to sort of match this, could promote our events better, but also crucially, I think, generate ad revenue, which can help fly in better speakers, but also help to make the union more accessible. So allow for subsidization of membership fees and ultimately bring them down lower. So on this, I'm happy to say that significant progress was made. This term, if you have a look at our union channel, YouTube channel, we've got videos that are more uniform, better presented. We've also started trialing shorter clips on our Facebook to promote events. So that happened, I think, yesterday or the day before with the Toronto Burke event. So we had a short clip from that to promote that. And the videos have been split up, as I promised they would be. So speaker events are now split up into a speech, a Q&A, and then audience Q&A, and debates are now split up into individual speakers. So I'm really happy to say that I pretty much fulfilled all of my promises on that. So that's the first point. The second point, championing collaboration to deliver the best term card possible. I think I was successful to some extent on this. I underestimated how difficult the role of speakers officer is and how little time and how much pressure there is to perform. So I think real collaboration really needs lots of terms of planning, lots of terms of building relationships with other societies in Cambridge in order to make really fruitful and great events happen together. But nonetheless, behind the scenes, I worked with the president of the Indus Society to try to bring in Bollywood speakers. On that, we were unfortunately quite unlucky because none accepted our invitations. I also had extensive meetings with UN Women in Cambridge, but unfortunately our efforts there didn't go further, but we have a relationship which we can use future terms. I'm happy to say that we recently collaborated with the Russia Society to host the Russian ambassador. We also collaborated with Hip Hop Society on a number of events, and there are, I think, a few other events where we reached out to societies to help promote their events and allow their members to attend our events as well. So I'm happy to say I did make some success in that. I also collaborated with other officers to help their debates or their panels to make those as successful as possible, as well as to try and make our speaker lineup as diverse as possible, trying to take suggestions from others on full committee as well as on standing committee. So I hope I've done that. And I guess it's not really for me to judge whether that's been done to successful level, I guess. So yeah, that's the second promise. The third promise was to commit to a diverse and well-balanced term card. And this is the promise that I'm most proud of my sort of achievements for. So just some stats. This term we've had 53% BME speakers, which I'm pretty proud of, so majority BME. And on Speakers Committee, I committed to having a gender balanced and I think higher BME representation. So I'm happy to say I delivered on both those. So 50%, 57% BME on my Speakers Committee and 64% female. So I think I succeeded on both those. And yeah, I think that this term, it's again not for me to judge, but I feel like I've put forward a pretty diverse set of speakers. We've had everyone from Shekwes to JPEG Mafia to the Russian ambassador to Ban Ki-moon to John Bercow to Karen Mills to investment managers of the world's largest pension fund. So lots of pretty cool speakers. And I really hope that if you were able to make any of those events, that you really enjoyed attending those events and engaging with those speakers. And something I'm also proud of is the number of events that were open to all. So a lot of events were open to the wider Cambridge community because I recognize that I think we are quite sort of insular and elitist almost as a society because we only allow certain events to be open to members, and there's big paywall for that. So where I could, I tried to make events open to all. So I hope people benefited from that. So that's my accountability promise. I'd just like to add that I think the union has a bit of a problem in terms of people running for these positions. We've seen that this election is only was pretty much uncontested across the board, and there are 2 positions where there have been no candidates who put themselves forward. So if you're interested in running for any union positions, whether that's speakers or any other roles on standing, I'd really like to have a chat if you're interested in figuring out how to do it, what sort of things are required, what it takes, what it's like to be on standing committee. I'm really more than happy to have a chat with anyone that's interested in being more involved with the union as a whole, because I think that's something that we really lack as a society, and we just haven't done enough sort of outreach to make people more welcome and enthusiastic about running for election or just joining committee in general. So thank you, and happy to take any questions on the things I've talked about today, as well as my record so far. Thanks.
Any questions for Abraham? The gentleman in the gallery?
Online presence. I'd like to ask if that includes the union's own website, because that has been frequently quite catastrophically late in updating, or often not updated at all when things have changed.
Okay, so this is a great point, and glad to take the first question of out of 3 accountability statements so far. So thank you, Richard Parkins, for giving me that question. On that, I'd like to say a fair bit about what has been done and what is left to be done. So I'd just like to highlight that the website we have is pretty outdated. I think a number of times ago, Standing Committee paid quite a lot of money to get the website made up to scratch, so that it would be a bit more modern and better for members and just general public to interact with. So a lot of money was invested then. Since then, it's been a bit of an uphill challenge to convince the Bursa as well as trustees to put more money towards modernizing the website again and bringing it up to scratch, because that would require a bigger outlay. And I think it's almost become an ambition of every single term standing committee to try and update and modernize the website, so much so that they're fed up of us sort of asking for more money to do that. So that's one big obstacle. In terms of what has been done, our vice president, Alicia, spent a lot of our Christmas and the vacation trying to self-teach herself how to code and improve the website. So she did a lot of work on that, trying to update that there. So I think that's something that has been done that's pretty tangible. In terms of trying to update the online calendar, I recognize that we've been pretty slack on that, but we've now sort of made that more well-defined part of the secretary's role. So our secretary this term has taken a more sort of active approach on making sure that that's updated, so that people who don't have Facebook are still able to see what our events are and when they are. So I hope that answers that question. Happy to take any more as well, if anyone's got any.
Would anyone else like to ask Abraham a question? Anyone in the gallery? The young lady over there.
This isn't really an accountability question, but which event are you looking forward to in the last week of Lent?
Well, thank you for the question. I guess it's not an accountability question, but still answer it nonetheless. I think there are many events to choose from. I think the one I'm probably most looking forward to is, I don't know, tie between presidential and Craig David. I think Craig David is a pretty fun event to be pretty hosting. Bit of a weird one. But yeah, presidential because I guess it's time to hand over to someone else who can do this job and to start to prioritize doing my degree after 2 terms of neglecting it. Craig David because should just be fun. The guy is almost a walking joke. But yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Can I just say, as fun as the question was, this is an accountability session and we are quite short on time. So does anyone else have any other questions that are holding everyone to account on the promises that he made to the membership?
Anyone? No one?
Okay, thanks everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, bye. to the debate guest thing upstairs. So I'm really sorry that I'm not going to be able to stay for Hustings. But I'll be there for the debate. So looking forward to seeing you guys there. Thanks.
Just before we welcome Freddie, in case you're wondering who the random 3 people are sat here in black tie looking a bit overly fancy, Carrie is currently the head of events management. He's a deputy returning officer. I'm the current vice president, and I'm returning officer. Patrick here is the head of audiovisual and a deputy returning officer. And keeping the time for us is Achilles, who is the current debating officer and one of my returning officers. I would now like to welcome Freddie, the treasurer. He was elected last term in a by-election. Freddie, the floor is yours. It's there.
Thank you, Alicia. Hello, everyone. I'd like to echo Abraham, first of all. Thank you for tolerating me for a term as treasurer. It's been really great fun and an honour to have served this term. So when I was elected last term, I ran on a couple of main pledges, and I'll read them out and sort of just explain briefly what I meant by them, and then the ways in which I hope I achieved them, and maybe the ways in which I think I could have done things better. So number 1 was effective publicity. I had a concern that we had treasurers putting a fair bit of work into getting discounts for members, but that they weren't publicised enough. So one of my key aims was to improve publicity on social media and in various other different ways as well. So one of the things I'm particularly proud of, and I must thank Leo and Patrick as well in the AV team, is we now have little cards which you might have seen with all our treasurers. Aman's holding it up, which is I'm very grateful of, with all the treasurers' discounts that we managed to secure this term. And I think that's a really great thing, and I from personal experience, have had a lot of people now discussing discounts, and hopefully that means more people using discounts as well. So I'm really pleased with that. I think we've upped social media presence of those discounts as well, but there's more I would have liked to have done. I think we could have made more posts. I did mention in my manifesto it would be good to have emails where we update members on the discounts that we've secured, and that didn't happen. So I apologise for that. Moving on. So I was particularly keen on widening the discounts that we were able to offer. And I'm fairly pleased to say that I think I achieved that. We had about double the number of discounts this term than we did last term, and a substantial number more than we did the term before. And I hope a greater diversity. One of my other pledges was improving accountability and making sure that our discounts reflected members' wishes. So one of the things I did was I made sure that in our members' survey that goes out at the end of term in December, we also included a question on what sort of members' discounts would you like to see? Do you feel you're getting good value for money? And I hope that has meant that we've been more representative in the discounts that we've secured this term. I had members come and mention that they'd quite like, particularly East Asian members were interested in discounts for firms, restaurants like Hong Kong Fusion and Granny Ma's Bubble Tea. We got the Granny Ma's Bubble Tea. Sadly, after many emails, we didn't get Hong Kong Fusion. But I'm very pleased with Granny Ma's, and I think generally the discounts we have are more diverse. So I'm really pleased with that. Moving on. So I think also one of the things when you run an election, particularly in a by-election, you don't always appreciate the full scope of the role, and there are things that come on when you're in the role that you maybe didn't anticipate. And so I think it's just worth mentioning the things that I have done that maybe I didn't anticipate in my manifesto. One of the things which Gabriel mentioned that I'm particularly proud of is bursary memberships and carbon offsetting. So these were initiatives of Gabriel's, but I put some time into creating some reports which we presented to trustees on both of those issues. I won't go into detail because Gabriel has already mentioned quite a lot about that. But I hope that the reports will be used in future. On carbon offsetting, for example, we've proposed a limited carbon offsetting arrangement for the next couple of terms, where we offset the cost of flights that we pay for. But I'm hoping that in future terms, because I've also projected the costs for offsetting all flights, that might be something that we consider in future. The other thing that sort of arose that I wasn't aware of when I was applying was that I am the last elected treasurer. And so a lot of what I've done this term is kind of laying the groundwork for an appointed treasurer, which will be on committee for a year afterwards. So what that's meant is that I've had a lot more involvement with the commercial side of the union, a little bit more oversight, signing off expenses and stuff. I was, particularly because of the bursary memberships, invited trustees, which is something that Treasurer isn't normally involved with. So I hope that I've laid some groundwork for having an enhanced Treasurer role in the next year. That's pretty much it from me. I don't want to go on too long because I know we've got Hustings, but I'm willing to take any questions.
Would anyone like to ask Freddie a question? If you do, please raise your hand and wave. No one? Okay, well, thank you very much, Freddie. I will now read a quick statement from our ENTS officer who couldn't be with us tonight because they're running a separate event. So Phoebe Pickering was elected alongside Freddie in the by-election last term, and Phoebe has prepared the following statement. This term, I've kept my promises, made in my Hustings speech and manifesto, to open up the union to new audiences and to try and offer something for everyone. I started my tenure by organising a general election results viewing party, which was extremely well attended, despite being outside of term time. Aside from committee socials, I next organised a joint event with the Krishna Consciousness Society. The idea behind this event was to guide people through the key methods of meditation and to bring attendees some inner peace amongst the busyness of Cambridge life. I then organised an open mic night, which showcased some brilliant student talent, which included comedians, a rock band, a jazz trio, and some fantastic singer-songwriters. This was then followed a few weeks later by my best attended event, Gin and Jazz, where over 200 people bought tickets. Puppy therapy was also a great success, teaming up with cancer awareness and teenagers and young peoples to fill the chamber with 12 puppies. And this event raised £900 in profits for the amazing charity. Aside from these, almost every week of term, with the help of Gabriel and Becky, I put on the Sunday mornings at the union event to try and make members feel more welcome. At every event, we provided members with a variety of pastries, tea, coffee, and a selection of Sunday papers and magazines. Finally, with the huge help of the incoming ENTS officer, Andrew, I am organising an end-of-term party at Cindy's, which promises to be a great send-off into the holidays. If you would like to ask Phoebe a question, or perhaps learn more about ENTS, you can email ents@cs.org, but unfortunately she can't be here tonight, and I haven't done her job, so I can't really answer on her behalf. Without further ado, we'll quickly move on to our Hustings. Here, we'll first hear from our speakers officer, and we'll go up in rank order. Both Joel and Jess will have 3 minutes to speak, whilst Aman will have 5, as she's running for the office of the president. Achilles will be keeping time, and hopefully we will quickly wrap it up so we can get on to the main debate. So Joel is a first-year student at Trinity Hall. He's currently a guest liaison assistant on full committee, and he's hoping to rise up the ranks to Speaker's Officer for Michaelmas 2020. Joel, the floor is yours.
Good evening. My name is Joel, and as you just heard, I study history and politics at Trinity Hall. So let me tell you a bit about my history and a bit about my politics, which I hope will demonstrate why I am qualified for the role of Speaker's Officer. Now, I've spent the past 2 terms at the union. My role on full committee has been to look after guest speakers, to make them feel at home and at ease in this chamber, in the knowledge that if people feel like that they're more likely to be candid and reveal a little of their lives if we make them feel welcome in our spaces. I've seen what the union does well and what we do less well. I'm particularly keen on ensuring that our relationship with a speaker doesn't end when they leave this building. That's why I'll ensure that all speakers are sent a thank you card with a nomination form inside, allowing them to connect us with future speakers. As well as bringing big names into the union and crafting a dazzling term card, we should be varying the format of events. Dialogues are usually more insightful than monologues. Anyone can rattle off a pre-prepared speech like this one. It's a little harder to respond to other people's ideas. So I pledge that speakers who address this union will face robust scrutiny from capable and confident interviewers. The union was not founded to be a stale stop on the after-dinner speaker circuit for victims of government reshuffles or business leaders who have recently had to retire and curiously spend more time with their families. We must ensure that we foster debate scrutiny. I've interviewed and challenged a range of public figures from Claude Littner, from The Apprentice, to ex-Tory chair Eric Pickles. And I think we need shorter speeches and more penetrating audience and interviewer-led questions. Continuing with my personal history, in the summer after I finished school, someone who's very much left of centre politically, spent a couple of weeks on a conservative summer program in America, which impressed upon me the value of diversity of opinion. We need other forms of diversity as well in this chamber. As the wall behind me indicates, although we've been defending free speech for 200 years, there are many voices that have been left out of the conversation. The union should seek to represent the underrepresented and marginalized within our society. That's why I'm pledging to deliver panels that discuss issues of race, gender, sexuality, faith, and class. As we include more voices within our conversation becomes richer. I hope I can count on your vote. Press going on Vote Joel for Speakers on Facebook to find out more. And remember to vote, regardless of how you vote, at 8 a.m. tomorrow. And I look forward to any questions. Thank you.
Would anyone like to ask Joel any questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, Joel. Next we have Jess. Jess is a second-year student at Jesus College. She's currently serving as the women's officer on the union's full committee, and she's hoping to be executive officer for Michaelmas 2020. Take it away, Jess.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming to Hustings. So as Alicia said, I'm currently the Women's Officer serving this term, and before that I started off at the union around Lent last year on Speakers Committee, then worked as a generalist on Press and Publicity, and then worked as Women's Officer Designate in Michaelmas. So I've got a lot of experience at the union behind the scenes, seeing how it works, and I think the most significant part of that experience was working on Vacation Committee for this term, where I saw exactly what goes into arranging debates and inviting speakers, and the pitfalls and successes that are involved in both of those. I played a big role in organising this term's literature debate, so I secured Will Self as a speaker and ran the auditions for that. So I have good experience already of exactly what it takes to put on a successful debate at the union, and that, coupled with my schools debating experience, plus the experience I've had involved with the Cambridge Union debating, I think gives me a really good idea of what makes a good debate, so what good topics are, and as well as how it's organised. So the main thing I want to do is take forward that experience to put on a programme of really varied and exciting debates in Michaelmas, which is a really important term. So this will involve, as well as delivering controversial takes and considering what continuing what we usually do on the hottest political topics of the time, I want to widen out the scope of debates to talk about, to open discussions on things like science, art, and pop culture, and kind of like big philosophical ideas and things that we're not having debates about at the moment. And I think one of the things that will really help with that is doing collaboration with societies and things. And in my role as college women's officer and women's officer here, I've built good networks to put that kind of thing in place. And the main, so as well as organisation and experience and varied debates, my main other pledge would be a friendlier and more welcoming chamber. So whether that's improving the relationship between committee and the memberships to kind of demystify what we do behind the scenes and make committee more friendly and approachable and transparent. I want to continue my work that we started on standing committee this term to get more female presidents on the walls of the chamber, as Jill said. And then finally, I want to ensure a gender balance in every debate and adequate BME representation. And what I've seen from my experience behind the scenes so far is that this is a very difficult thing to do. It's a difficult thing to promise. But I think that knowing how it works and what the difficulties are, and knowing how much time I have from the experience I've had is a really, is virtually the only way to ensure that, as well as using the networks that I've built in my role as women's officer. So if you want organisation and experience, varied and exciting debate, and a friendly and welcoming chamber for everyone, where everyone's voices are heard and represented, vote tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jess, for your speech. If anyone would like to ask Jess any questions, please raise your hands and wave. Nope. Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. We'll now quickly move on to hear from Aman, who's running for the office of the president. Aman has 5 minutes to speak, and take it away, Aman.
Hi, I'm Iman. I'm currently in my second year, and as you've probably guessed, I'm running for president. You may know me as this term's executive officer. That is the person who organises the debates this term and appoints the full committee. If not, you may know me as one of Easter 2019's generalists, or in the term before that, a steward, where I donned the high-vis many a time. I'm running because I'd like to try and revive the union as a place that really encourages free speech and free debate, and also as a place that makes its members feel a little more special. The former part of that sentence largely refers to my ideas surrounding debates, and the latter about entertainment. Perhaps as executive officer, I'm being a little biased in making one of my major points about debates, but the union is first and foremost a debating society, and I think that's where our priorities should lie. When working on speaker lineups, I want us to be as flexible as possible. Michaelmas has the luxury of time that Lent and Easter don't have, and I want to make sure that we use it as best as possible in order to secure the strongest speaker lineups. But before we get to speaker lineups, the motions and topics on which our debates are held on must be influenced by members. It's your society as much as it's mine, and it's for that reason I'd like to ensure the continuation of membership surveys to help decide what topics we have our debates on. Again, on the topics of motions, I think we should be a bit bolder. I think we can push the boat out. I think we should have the conversations no one else is having, and have the conversations that we're also wary of having. And in doing so, I'd really like to make the union the heart of student politics once again. As for Ents, though I did serve on last year's Garden Party Committee, I don't particularly have as much experience within the union. That being said, however, I'm currently wrapping up my year as president of Cambridge University Geographical Society, in which I did organise a garden party and a Christmas ball, so I do know roughly how these things works. My vision for Ents is something that's quite representative of this term. It's a great example to follow on from. Gin and jazz, open mic nights, more things like that. And maybe things like wine and cheese and casino nights, and perhaps even an event or two where we dress up. Currently the only event that offers that in Michaelmas is the Freshers' Ball, and that's just it. It's only for freshers. So I'd like I'd like there to be an event for everyone. It's high time that the calibre of our social events reflects the price you pay to be a member of this society. ENTS is also something where we can collaborate a bit more with student societies. If you heard my accountability report earlier, it's not as viable for things like debates, but it is viable for ENTS, and we can engage more with the wider student population here. Student bands and groups are given a platform, and we get to enjoy their talent. I've also got a couple of smaller points, and even though they're smaller, they're just as important. Namely, to engage more with graduates. They are a large part of our membership, and I think we need to actively reach out more to them. I'm glad that this term saw the introduction of a graduate officer. Hello, James. And I'd like to ensure that position stays on committee for the terms to come. As mentioned earlier, membership surveys, it's where we can hear from you. And whilst those are also online, I want to ensure that they're paper copies sort of in the lobby, which you can then pop into the suggestions box in case you don't use the internet as much. Ultimately, I'm running on a campaign of cultural change, not so much structural change. There have been some big changes to the system in recent terms, and I'd like the union to adjust first before making big changes, unless we think they're absolutely necessary. And with large changes, I think it's good to consult with members first through things like open meetings. And as much as I want to make this a society that encourages all sorts of debates and discussions, I also want it to be a place that's transparent, efficient, and accessible. Thank you so much for listening, and I think I'm now ready to take questions.
Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask Amon? The gentleman in red.
Microphone.
At this set of elections, as far as I know, none of the positions are being contested. Mm-hmm. That doesn't seem very much like democracy, either to me or probably to the world outside the union. What are you going to do about it?
Okay, well, I think actually this term's election is uncontested. I think that's largely the sort of fallout of a big radical shake-up to the system we had in Easter, where we introduced generalists and then scrapped it. And I think that's had an impact on who does and doesn't stay on committee. And I think that's why actually we've got fewer candidates running for positions. As for actually trying to make it a more competitive place, I think I'd like to echo things that Jess and Joel have both said and try and make this as open as possible. You know, we actively put ourselves out to members, get them involved, and do what we can to kind of encourage a more sort of competitive and inclusive environment for all members, so that they then run for election.
Thank you, Amon. Would anyone like to ask Amon a question? The young man over there in the blue shirt. Can you wait for a microphone to get to you somehow? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you said you wanted to push the boat out with debates. Is there anything you want to hear debated that you think was too scary for the current committee to put to debate?
I wouldn't say too scary. I think it's just sort of a chamber that can become quite tense, and perhaps the vibe isn't quite right. But things such as, you know, religion, capital punishment, sort of hotly contested topics like Israel and Palestine, I think those are important conversations to have and things that we should have. So I guess those would be my sort of topics I'd like to do more debates on.
Thank you very much, Amon. Would anyone like to ask Amon one final question? Wave to me if you would, please. No? Okay. Thank you ever so much for sitting through this long Hustings. And without further ado, we will wrap up and start the main debate.